broadcasting from across the North American continent of the Terran Empire, bringing you our unpopular Star Trek opinions since 2020. This is Code 47.
Back again, party time over at Starbase Code 47. That's right. This is episode 56, coming to you on the Secret Friends Unite podcast network. I am Charlie Carden, your Trek Lord of West Michigan, coming to you for week 2 with my super special, totally awesome guest hosting individual. That would be Paul Moderman of the Rich Davenport dynasty, as it were, who has been on loan to me while Rich is off on an away mission in sunny Florida. So, Paul, how the hell are you this week?
Charlie, I'm doing freaking fantastic. How about you?
I am doing good. It's a sunny Saturday here in Michigan. It's about 50 degrees. It's the fall that we've been waiting for, because I have been like, come on, fall, do something for us. But now we got it, and I like it.
It's like 49 here in Minnesota. Same deal.
Yeah,
just
I know.
Same thing. Yep.
Just enjoying the hell out of it. So,
Yep.
Well, good. Well, we're coming back again for week 2 of 4 that Paul is gracing me with his presence. And he was the one that came up with kind of the boat driving segment that is running the show, which is I'm functioning as a Star Trek shaman, as a Sherpa of a certain kind, because Paul kind of identified to me that, I'm not super familiar with Star Trek Voyager. I'm not super familiar with Star Trek Deep Space Nine. Give me a 2 and a 1. Give me 2 great and give me 1 terrible, and then let's see let's take the chocolate and the peanut butter and squish them together and give some original thought. So without further ado, usually we tackle the news. I was looking over the news sources this week, and they were just not doing it for me. So we're just gonna skip it. Segment 1, you're out of here.
Screw it.
No way, no way, no how. I'm not the system. You're the system. Oh my gosh. So we're just gonna get right into it. So last week we did Voyager. We took on Scorpion with Species 8472 and the Borg and 7 of 9. And as I was talking about last week, that was the beginning of season 4 of Voyager, where they said, look, the ratings kind of suck. The show is kind of boring. People don't really dig it. We got to mix things up. How do you do that? New character. Well, at the same time, in season 4 of DS9, which was 2 years previously, in the fall of 1995, they were kind of in the same spot. They were like, the show's kind of dragging, in which case they were actually, DS9 was in syndication, where Voyager was on a network, if that's what you want to call the UPN. And again, networks are such a meh these days, but we watch things. A network is Netflix or Hulu or Disney Plus. That's what a network is now. But back in those days, it was a big deal. It was big, it was important, and you had your sweeps twice a year, and in May and then November, and that's when the ratings got taken. So you knew this and that. So it's the fall of 1995, or rather, it's the summer of 95 when they're making these decisions. The previous summer or spring, Star Trek: The Next Generation concluded its run, and Star Trek Generations took place shortly thereafter, and then it was like, we got to wait for the next movie. Well, all those actors who were part of Star Trek: The Next Generation kind of went on to do different stuff. Well, at some point during the late part of 94 to early part of 95, and having this come to Jesus talk in the writer room at Deep Space Nine, they said, okay, we got to do something. We got to add a new element. We got to spice this shit up. What are we going to do? Worf. We want Worf. We want to turn this into a Klingon thing. We want to bring back arguably the most interesting, one of the more interesting characters from Star Trek: The Next Generation that people love, and we want to slap him into our show, so to speak, and have it hopefully be something that boosts us up. So that's what we got. That's what we got in the fall of 1995. Season 4 double-length premiere of Deep Space Nine, The Way of the Warrior.
The Way of the Warrior.
And so I will read the recap, the very brief paragraph recap. It was a double-length episode, so this counts as our 2, just kind of as we did. I'm trying to really enhance Paul with the creme de la creme of the good stuff, so that he really gets a taste for it.
It's been, Charlie. It's been beautiful.
It's 2 chef's kiss. Mwah, mwah. It's good. Okay, so here's a summary. When a Klingon fleet under General Martok arrives at the station ostensibly to protect the Alpha Quadrant from the Dominion. Cisco recruits Lieutenant Commander Worf to discover the Klingons' true intentions. Paul, it's all you.
Okay, so the first thing I thought was, holy crap, they still have baseball in the 24th century. I was like, good. I'm glad for that. I'm glad the future still has baseball. I'm not sure I heard any references to baseball in TNG or anything else, so I was glad to hear that like baseball is still happening.
Right.
Another thing I noticed is that in this episode, but in a lot of DS9, I think the director chooses a lot of like close shots.
It's in your face.
It's
It's
very
in
in
their
your
face.
face. Yeah, it's in their
Right.
face. It's very it makes the conflict kind of pop out at you a little bit more when because when Cisco is mad, you're like, whoa, that dude's pissed off right in my face.
Yeah,
You know
right.
what I mean? It's got a
Right. No.
to that. It's got menace to it. So I like that choice for this show, especially because as the more I get into it, or the more I get into it, is like DS9 is on a different trajectory than Voyager or TNG or whatever. DS9 has this like political and diplomatic intrigue that those shows have less of, right?
Or none. Yeah. Yeah,
Or none.
with Voyager, and you probably really didn't I don't think you caught any of it within the two-parter of the
No.
Scorpion, because we were halfway through the show. In the first season of the show, and really only in the first half of the first season of the show, there was the fact that Voyager, a quarter of the crew were these Maquis, these freedom fighters, these rebels. Think about like the
Uh-huh.
Rebel Alliance. Think about if Han, Luke, Chewie, and Leia ended up on a Starfleet ship, and
Right.
they were like meh, and the Cardassians are the Empire,
Uh-huh.
and all of the rebels were really outlaws, and somehow the Starfleet people were like, well, we're stuck together and whatever, and they would butt heads, right? Well, by the time you get
Yeah.
around to that, there goes the political part of it. They just kind of like, this is, I mean, clearly within Voyager, they found that was not interesting. So they were just kind of like, boop, and they push it to the side.
Yeah. Yeah. So DS9 has that, and I like it. So okay, which leads me to sort of my first Sherpa guide question here, and this is so Deep Space Nine is a station presumably in deep space, um,
Correct.
and it's
No,
next to
and it's numbered 9.
it's the ninth one,
Right.
starting from one presumably. Um, it's right next to a wormhole. Is is DS9 in place because of its proximity to that wormhole?
That's a great question that did, and again, I would love, well, you should just go back and watch blah, blah. I know your time is limited, but
Yeah,
in the first episode, I'll give you the
yeah,
elevator speech of the spoiler. What happened was, there's the planet Bajor, which is obviously established in the episode you watched.
yep,
Bajor is not a Federation planet. It's not
right,
Starfleet,
right,
which is why Major Kara wears a different uniform, and she's a major, not a lieutenant commander.
sure.
And what happened was, Deep Space Nine itself is an old Cardassian mining station that was in orbit of Bajor. What happens in that first
Oh,
episode is that Cisco and Dax are taking a runabout out to explore strange readings and the blah blah blah, and they discover the wormhole probably in proximity to Bajor, but far enough away that if you put it would be better if the station was sitting in front of it. And
right.
so what happens throughout the course of the episode is they find a way to move the station from the orbit of Bajor to be next to the wormhole so that
Oh,
the station can safeguard the wormhole.
okay,
So yeah, it was that's why DS. And again, what happened was when the Cardassians were occupying Bajor, they left, and when they left the station there, and so it became a
okay,
Bajoran station. And then
okay,
Bajor said to Starfleet, come help us out. We're just getting back on our feet, and blah blah blah. So Starfleet was brought in to run the station. So that's
okay.
the. I hope that was less than a 2-minute drill. The
No, that was good.
elevator speech. Yeah.
That really does help. And the that wormhole, I get the sense that stuff pops out of it every now and again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
every now and again.
Yeah. So, the voice. So the intro, the credits. There's the comet that kind of is going by with leaving dust, and you get kind of a flyover of the station and stuff. There's no voiceover.
Right.
for it,
And that
right?
was
Because
the this yeah
TNG has the voiceover.
right. And this was being
Um,
the third Star Trek show. This was the first time that they didn't do that, and then Voyager followed suit.
okay.
And then when Enterprise came along in the early 2000s, they had a pop song, and people just did not know what to do with themselves. They were like, "Oh my God, it was fire!" They bitch about it to this day, and it was 20
Yeah,
years ago. I mean, give me a
yeah,
break.
okay, yeah. So that I was actually, I was like, okay, cool. I dig. I also, in the intro, I thought to myself, this is great. This is great music, and it kind of fits. Like, I like how the intro music for these various series fits with the series, right? Because with TNG, you've got this sort of like sense of adventure and excitement a little bit. With Voyager, you've got this sort of soaring thing, like exploration can't help but happen, where we're in this whole other freaking quadrant. We can't do it. We can't help but explore. And DS9 has this very, it's got a stationary feel to it. It's got this sort of there's like a long held sustained notes that are underneath the melody. The melody doesn't go very fast or
Right,
hop around a lot. It kind of adds to the weight of like DS9 is not exploring. DS9 is where it is for a political and a purpose, right? So that's cool. I like that. The Once again, the credits give away the game because the credits tell you that Michael Dorn, as like they had just announced that he's there basically. So if you were watching the credits, you would have already known what was about to happen. Um, I noticed that Cisco has a Skylab model with the
yes,
space
it's pretty
shuttle.
cool, huh?
That's cool. I love seeing like, the history that we know threading into hundreds of years later of more history of this kind of stuff. This also must be after Generations, right? This must be after Generations because
Yes, well, yeah, it is
the
because
Enterprise is destroyed.
it went. Let me see if I can remember
Yeah.
my star dating. This would have only been a few months after Generations happened because I'm
Right.
remembering my star dates. Generations was set at the end of the year that followed when the TNG series ended. So
Sure.
season 7 of TNG, Generations, and then this season. So it was if
And
you
then
if
okay.
you remember the years, 2370 was the end
Yep.
of TNG.
Yep.
2371 was Generations and Voyager season
Hmm.
1. 2372 was then season 4 of DS9.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay. The Dax
Yes.
Dax, which I didn't know, I didn't realize, is living her fourth of X lives or whatever, or seventh of X.
She says at one point she's 7 or 8 and then 9 by the time we get to the end of the series because it changes again. She gets a new host, and
Oh.
she is yeah. And again, I don't want to jump too far ahead, but she is at the time of season 6. She says that her symbiote is 356 years old.
Ah.
So do that, man. Well, that doesn't mean that like a symbiote is born and maybe it doesn't get a host right away or whatever. But 356,
Ah.
that's a lot. That's obviously a lot.
Okay. 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 um, I love when the Klingons are when like Klingons like the Empire, the Council, the High Council, all that kind of I love when those guys are a part of the equation, right? Because they bring such a different energy than humans bring
Right.
to things, and yet there's a way that there's still like there's an alliance, right? There's a peace treaty
Right.
in effect here, which is great.
Right.
Um, but what I love about the Klingons is or one of the things I love about the Klingons is their sense of honor and how they sort of weave that in there. And when when I think it's Worf says about the guy's son, the guy says, you've harmed my son's honor.
Yeah, Martok's son. Yeah, yeah.
Martok's son, yeah. And Worf says, you cannot take away what someone does not have.
Ooh, I know. Klingon zingers.
Yeah, that
It
was
was like if it was a sitcom, they would be like,
yeah,
ooh.
yeah. There'd be an audience like, "Oh my
Oh,
god!"
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
That was
No,
because
yeah, and he says,
that's a
yeah,
serious burn. Like,
well, for real, because if
yeah,
again, you think about the Klingon society being like, not in its entirety, but like the old Southern ways of like, I demand satisfaction, and slap a guy across
Yeah,
the face with a
yeah,
glove or
yeah,
whatever. Not to draw the allegory too deep down on slavery or anything like that, but just
yeah, yeah,
that I'm a Southern gentleman, and and
yeah,
yeah, the Klingons, they have a very strict code of conduct for everything they do. A Klingon who can't stand on his feet and fight would commit ritualistic suicide, and that was an episode that was covered in TNG when Worf shattered his spine, and he
yeah,
was, and it was he was trying to have someone help him die because he can't do it himself because that's blah blah
yeah,
blah. And Klingons, but then in a later episode of DS9, it comes out that, I thought Klingons were supposed to kill yourselves if you were captured. And then the line is like, not when there's still enemies to fight or if there's a way to escape. I'm like, okay, there's just so many weird little rules. But again, it's so ingrained in their society that no one doesn't know in a situation what you're supposed to do when this thing happens.
yeah,
If A then C, if F
yeah,
then Q 312 subset
yeah,
8,
yeah, yeah,
that's Klingon society. Yeah.
yeah. Everyone kind of knows and knows how to navigate the steps and layers there of that stuff.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. That's so, and I like that too because that is that's a good way of sort of because it in the bad episode that we have later,
Oh
there's different
God.
stuff, but what it does communicate in the broader sense is like one of the which I'm sure if there are other civilizations out there, which I hope and think there probably are,
Right.
um, that will be one of the major barriers to overcome for exploration is cultures that are so
Mm-hmm.
incredibly different that it will take a major effort on the part of both parties of whatever first contact happens in the future to like if there's a relationship there, it has to be navigated carefully
Mm-hmm.
because whatever species we meet out in the galaxy, right? they will have they will have evolved and developed and had civilization and culture and every other thing so incredibly differently that their approach to life, the universe, everything will likely be like it won't be like English and like Chinese as
Mm-hmm.
languages go or cultures go. It will be like Earth and something incredibly fucking different
Big
that will
time.
take all of our effort to sort of bridge that gap. That's a like to me that's a bigger bridge to gap than any one nation or other nation on Earth, right?
Right. Right.
Because
And
we all have like 2 arms and 2 legs, and some
right.
of us go bald and that kind of stuff, right? We have those things in common.
And something that is so different about Star Trek versus science fiction of other kind is that you would just simply expect, and it happens with a lot of these Star Trek races, is that if you see another alien species, you just ultimately want to kill them. Oh, you're different
Yeah,
than us, you got to die.
just blast.
Where somehow, and it took some time, but it didn't take a lot of time. There was Earth, Starfleet, but eventually there were 4 other interstellar species that could get along enough to start a federation. But
Yeah,
then, that was after a long war with the Romulans, and the Romulans were actually an offshoot of the Vulcans, which is one of the 5
right.
races that started the Federation. And then they bumped into the Klingons, but the
Yeah,
Klingons and the Romulans hated each other. So tying back to really what we were touching last week is that Star Trek is this very Shakespearean, and there's all this different
yeah,
weird stuff that happens with that. So, yeah, but anyway, too far afield. This is your exploration, so
yeah.
I am listening.
This is great though because I like that kind of I like that discussion. Here's another thing is along those same lines, not in terms of well, maybe in terms of culture, but not in terms of different races, but the different captains slash commanders of each series,
Sure.
right? So the example I thought of here was so Cisco takes like the command crew in the Defiant, and they go off to defend a Cardassian ship
Right.
from the Klingons.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and Cisco chooses to use the cloaking device they have on that shuttle, even though or I'm not sure Defiant is a shuttle, but that ship
It's
Defiant,
small ship. It's a small ship. Yeah, but
small
technically,
ship.
whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. um, even though the treaty says
Right.
you can't use the cloak in the Alpha Quadrant,
Right.
right?
Yeah, because they had, if you jump back to the beginning of season 3, which is when we're introduced to the Defiant,
Mm,
they get the ship. They cut a deal with the Romulans, and it's weird because they had a Romulan on board to operate the cloak, which lasted for an episode or two because they're like, well, we don't want a Romulan character on the show, so forget that.
Yeah.
If somebody could just push a button, then that was how they worked it out. But yeah, they were only supposed to have it to use in the Gamma Quadrant, the other side of the wormhole, and then only in exchange for any intelligence that they might gather in the Gamma Quadrant, because the Romulans had never been there, because the Romulans had a Cold War like relationship with the Federation, and there was no joint operations or going in. They had a demilitarized zone between the two areas because they were Cold Warriors.
Yeah. So Cisco chooses to flip on the cloak.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought to myself, as soon as he did that, I thought to myself, I'm not sure Picard would choose that.
Right.
And I thought, I'm not sure Janeway would choose that either.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Even though there's but there's a pragmatic balance to all of those things, because you can see the reason for Cisco doing that. You can see that you can get why Cisco chooses to cloak the Defiant to go do what he has to do.
Right.
And he's weighing certain things with Cardassia and the Klingon Empire and the Klingon Federation sort of balance there, and Picard is weighing similar things with, or would be weighing similar things with other things too, and it's very it's so I love that the personalities of the captains or commanders, right, drive so much of what goes on. Good, because you could have the sense that oh my gosh, these technology is so advanced, they can do whatever they want to do, and it's just like boom 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 bang.
Right.
But the personality of the person in the chair is probably still the biggest factor for any ship or any station, right?
Right.
In its process of going through the adventures and things that it does, is the person in the chair is the biggest factor, is the biggest whatever. It's still a meat intelligence, so to speak.
Meat.
Right.
the,
Making calls.
The meat cute. Yeah,
The
exactly.
meat. Yeah. Making calls that that are not like, the ship's computer can't make that call. You know what I mean? So I love that. I love that side of it too. And I would love, of course, it's got this what if, because we've been going on this what if thing over on Great Disturbances.
Right.
Every now and again we do what if episodes, and this one for me, that moment hit a what if for me. What if Picard was the commander, so to speak, of DS9, and Picard gets on the Defiant, and Picard has that same choice. How would Picard navigate that choice of I'm gonna do this, and holy shit, I might fuck up, our treaties and everything else like that. It's there's infinite ways to sort of think about and enjoy that kind of thing when you have the rich personalities
Right.
as part of the leadership of stuff.
Exactly. So, well, good. So that's still within. It's kind of hard to split it into parts 1 and 2, but yeah. So we covered, obviously, the Klingons come along. Worf goes into full investigator mode, and he's kind of butting heads with Odo, which is interesting because that's Odo's job on the station. Is he's the chief investigator dude. And so Worf uses his abilities to, or his contacts to kind of decode the fact that the reason the Klingons are really there is they're like, something funny is going on Cardassia, because the government collapsed. Civilian government is in place. They have, and if you know anything about the Cardassians, which is a little more informed watching the show as a whole, is that they have this very strict military government dichotomy, and then if one collapsed, and then the civilian government took over, and how does that interface with the military? So they, the big Klingon brain trust, and actually it's kind of a conspiracy within a conspiracy that you learn about in the season 5 premiere, is that, I don't really want to jump ahead and ruin it for you, but it's conspiracy within a conspiracy that has to do with the other driving villain of the show, villainous race of the show.
Yeah.
So it's deeply layered. But this was huge for the station, that we finally got a ship in season 3, because people were bored with the fact that in seasons 1 and 2 they had the most that they could do to get away from the stations. Had these runabouts, which were basically like school bus sized shuttlecraft.
Oh, sure.
That were like, oh well, they're cool. They're not cool enough. So they got the Defiant, which is like the Millennium Falcon of Star Trek.
Yeah, yeah,
You know what
yeah,
I'm saying? It's going out there and blowing shit up, and it's like,
yeah,
woo, and it's very exciting. But again, still wasn't enough. So this, what's crazy about this and that all of the space stuff that you end up seeing is that this was still maybe 4 or 5 years before CGI really takes over in
yeah,
sci-fi shows. So these are all practical models, reuse shots,
yeah,
repurpose shots and stuff. And so that last kind of climactic battle at the end is just it's all practical effects and all that. And you can tell because some of it is like, oh, something exploded and it was like a ship, but then it was replaced with like a puff of flame, and it was like, oh, okay,
okay, sure,
But
yeah,
as audiences of the time,
but yeah,
we were kind of like, woo. And again, this and Voyager as a series have not been, nor may they ever be, converted into high definition because of what I was kind of describing.
yeah,
It's I've read article upon article that has said, well, the interest isn't there, and even just to separate it and make it high definition, there'd be so much cost, and we don't really
yeah,
have a way to recover it because physical media. Now, I know somewhere your pal and mine, Rich Davenport, will stop and look up into the sky. Physical media is dying. We know Rich loves physical media,
yeah,
but as far as new stuff being produced, that was how they got TNG and TOS, and then to a lesser degree Enterprise, pushed out there because they felt that was that. Well, with Enterprise, it had been done in HD, or it was more of an easy conversion. But with
yeah,
TOS and TNG, they spent just boatloads of cash to
yeah,
upload those. But those are the two most popular series, so it just was
yeah,
not a big deal.
yeah,
To do that and it really pays off if you
yeah,
watch either one or two of those on
yep,
any streaming platform or on a disc. And I do have all the discs. It's remarkable. It's remarkable how
it
beautiful
is,
it is. There's no doubt. But with this, it's still very grainy. And
yeah,
the other thing that's holding it back is that they can't really. There's a processor, a reason, and the technical people could walk you through it of why converting all that practical model shooting to upconvert it is not really possible. They would have to redo it, and the cost would be beyond the sky. So
yeah,
we may
yeah,
be stuck with this forever. But it's still,
interesting,
when it comes to DS9, it is still, and I'm sure if you have a chance to continue to explore DS9, you'll find that when it comes to Star Trek, there is no finer storytelling than DS9. They really, as a standalone piece or as a standalone series where they expand through plot threads kind of throughout. Like we just finished watching The Sopranos like an hour ago. We had never seen it
uh,
before. Saw the final episode, but to see a show that developed plot threads kind of throughout from episode 1 to episode 86.
yeah,
DS9 is very much the same, but it's 176 episodes, so
yeah,
it's
okay,
that much longer. And much like the episode that we're going to touch in a minute here, where we talk about a terrible episode. There were certainly bumps along the way. Not every episode is a winner, and so you're going to get some duffers. There's no doubt about it. But
yeah,
from stem to stern, I mean, I wish I could get you to watch all the last 10 episodes that make up that final arc because it's so amazing. But I know I can't do that. But
yeah.
anyway,
Well,
but anyway,
we'll work on it. We'll work on
we'll work on it.
it.
Yes.
So speaking of that battle at the end, that battle between the space stuff and then the onboard DS9 stuff was way more intense than any other like Star Trek battle, right,
Hmm.
on a television series I'd ever seen. There was like so many people getting phasered and beat up, and so many like hundreds of photon torpedoes being shot and hundreds of phaser blasts going by and so many ships blowing up. It was like the scale of that battle on one deep space station was insane. It was insane. It was good. I loved it for because the size and scope of the battle. I kind of sat there like, holy shit, this is intense for one space station to be the fulcrum of so many things, right? And so of course there's lots of interested parties and lots of people fighting, but I think it set the tone right for this this little moment in Federation and Klingon and Cardassian history is super important. So there's lots of important people and forces converging here to make
Hmm.
things happen, and
Hmm.
and the battle set the tone for that. I thought it was well done. I thought it was like powerful, hit me in terms of that what that battle was. And then like overall, this double length episode, I like see always thought Worf was interesting, and yet we didn't get enough of Worf
Right.
in TNG.
Right. And
You
again,
know what I mean?
and he
And
was, because he was a lower tier character. I mean, even if you
yeah,
watch the credits, it's the only show when TOS started, it was starring William Shatner, starring Leonard Nimoy. And then I'm trying to remember if it was either from the jump or it was later in the series. It was Andy Forrest Kelly. Everybody else was supporting cast. Their names were at the end of the show
right.
in the title card that would run. So they were not, even though there were a lot of this is a Scotty episode. This is an episode about. I'm trying to remember who else had standalone episodes. Nurse Chapel had a standalone episode. You know,
Chekhov, or yeah,
yeah, exactly. Would and when you got to TNG, it was starring Patrick Stewart, starring Jonathan Frakes. Then everybody else was also starring, but it was all at the beginning of the show. So, and then when they went to DS9, it was back to just Avery Brooks was a starring character, and everybody else was also starring, and
yeah,
it continued that way. So, you know, I mean, in the first season in particular, they of TNG, they had an extra character because they had a security chief and they had Worf, who was in a red uniform, so he was not security, and he just
yeah,
kind of floated around the bridge, and they're like, somebody's got to go up to take a piss. Worf, take the helm. Somebody's got to
yeah,
go up
yeah,
to do blah. Worf, do this, and you'd see Worf in the back working at a station. Sometimes he'd be in Data's spot. Sometimes he'd be in Geordi's spot because in the first
yeah,
season, Geordi was the con officer. And then Tasha died because Denise Crosby chose to leave the show. And then Worf became acting chief of security. And then in season 2, he took the post officially, got the gold uniform. And then there were a decent amount of, I won't say it was equal sharing, but I mean, as they went through the supporting cast of TNG, they continued to, there were more Riker episodes and Picard episodes than there were of the others, but everybody
yeah.
got a little bit here and
Everybody
there.
got
So, yeah,
pretty good taste of that sort of central on Data, central on Wesley,
right.
central
And,
on Beverly.
and it was
Yeah,
throughout TNG, and he had joined he joined the writer staff in maybe season 3. Ron D. Moore, who went on to make Battlestar Galactica, the reimagined, one of my all-time favorites that I absolutely swear by. That was his baby, relaunching that. He started TNG season 3, an episode called "The Bonding," about Worf bonding with an orphan child for whom Worf was responsible for the death of his surviving parent on an away
mm,
mission. This woman had died, and so Worf performed this ceremony to bond himself to this kid. And it was the first episode where you really dug into Klingon culture within TNG that kind of set the pace for any other really Worf episode that followed, including Ethics in season 5 where he broke his back that I was talking about a little
yeah,
while ago.
yeah.
And again, that was Ron Moore, and then Ron Moore was one of the guys who drove the bus for Deep Space Nine, and so not at all surprising that Ron Moore wanted to bring in Worf, and then Worf drove the most compelling storylines from here to the end of the series, starting with this one.
Okay, okay, yeah. Because what a great choice for that. Because Worf's central conflict here is my people versus my duty. Should I choose my heritage, or sort of where my heart is, right? All this kind of stuff
Mm-hmm.
is like a fantastic, like, kudos to Michael Dorn. Like, you realize how much as an actor Michael Dorn is sort of strangely handicapped by his prosthetics, right?
Right,
Because
right, big time.
Worf can't move his eyebrows, right? Because there's no muscles there, right?
Right,
And he's got his nose covered and all this kind of stuff too. But Michael Dorn still gives you like this emotional range of this Klingon warrior going through this process, and I thought it was amazing. I thought it was amazing, to watch Worf go through the process. There was one moment in that whole thing that I didn't quite understand,
okay,
and maybe it was just a funny thing I don't understand about the military. I don't know. Is that at one point, not at the end, but kind of getting on in the episode, Worf is giving his resignation to Cisco,
right.
and Cisco's like, "No, I don't accept." Like, what is it like? Is
Is
that
that
how that works?
No, not in Earth military. Not in
Right.
like the U.S. military. I get the feeling that Starfleet is very much. It's like at will employment. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I don't know if you've ever had a job where someone just says this is at will employment, and if we don't like you, we're going to fucking fire you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or you can simply say, you know what, I found a better opportunity, and I'm going to leave. So I
Okay.
get the feeling that Starfleet is like that, because there's in several episodes you say I'm out, and someone will take off their comm badge and they'll toss it down on a desk. I'm
Yeah.
out. And you can do
Yeah.
that in the military. They're like, oh, and you're going to the stockade. You're
Yeah,
going to be in
you are
prison
now
for
in
desertion.
prison.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's not. Yeah, Starfleet is very
Starfleet
much.
doesn't work that way.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, in a lot of cases, you'll find Starfleet is not described as a military institution. It's more
Sure.
of exploration and stuff, and so it doesn't really follow a lot of those norms and predicates of
Military
Earth based
roots.
military.
Yeah.
Even though you do get a little, like for example, in later seasons, Dax became the captain of the Defiant for a little while. And even though she held the rank of lieutenant commander, which she does in this episode, this was actually the first episode where I think she got promoted because Worf was coming on board, and they didn't want Worf to outrank her, because their relationships developed to the point that they get together and they eventually get married, and they didn't
Yeah.
really want to deal with that deal. So it was like, well, there's an old naval tradition, and when someone is in command of a vessel, regardless of rank, they are called captain. So it's like you get
Sure.
little, but that line of dialogue came from O'Brien, who's very earthy, very earth-like, because he's an Irishman and he's very da da da
Yeah.
da, and it just that
Yeah.
kind of fit the bill. So anyway, yeah, so yeah, I would say that I would picture Starfleet. That'd be a great title for this episode. Starfleet at will employment. There we go. I'm going to change it right now.
That's a good one. That's a good one. But yeah, so this is great. So my question to you then too is, to you as the Sherpa, what makes this one great?
I think making this one great is doing exactly kind of what you described with Worf, is that maybe we got a little bit of him, and maybe we didn't get a little bit of him. Maybe there's more of him to come. But I just remember watching this for the first time, is that this generated a sense of buzz and promise in a
Uh-huh.
series that I liked very much, but hadn't come anywhere close to realizing its potential. And
Right.
I couldn't tell you for absolute fact that it's because Michael Dorn joined the cast that this series, the quality of it just went whoop. Because
Sure.
season 4 is great, season 5, a couple of stumbles here and there. When they hit the end of season 5, that is when the open war with the Dominion begins, which again
Right.
it's hinted at a lot in this
Yep.
episode. They're erased from the Gamma Quadrant, of which Odo is actually a member of that species, though he is not aligned with them.
Yeah.
But they're shapeshifters. They're very behind the scenes, and they have much like Species 8472. They want to impose their order on the universe,
Sure.
just in a very different way that's not quite so filled with squishy fluid.
Yeah.
But I don't know for a fact that Michael Dorn was catalyst that made all that happen, but it tends to coincide in such a fashion that his coming to the show brought about a new dawn, that you really got to see some of the best of this show. And to me,
Right.
took it from run of the mill, like, oh, here's a plot line, like the episode, like the bad episode we're going to talk about in a second here, that it's like, oh, okay, it's very science fiction-y plot, and it's dull, and it doesn't have anything to do with anything, and we'll never speak of it again, to something that is very ironclad and impactful and filled with character development and filled with moments that you didn't see coming and moments that you thought coming but kind of turned in a different direction, and just a lot of different stuff. So that's long episode short. Michael Dorn cling on his way into a new age for the show.
Okay. Okay. I like that. I like that. And yeah, and I totally dug this episode. Again, this is easily a catalyst for me to continue my DS9 process here, just like the Voyager one was for me too. So
Right.
absolutely, yeah.
Absolutely. All right. Well, with that being said, unless you have any other thoughts, let's take a perhaps shorter foray into
Yeah.
a very early episode of the show, and one that, I mean, talk about the brown note here. This was just an
Yeah.
absolute flop that
What a stinker.
anybody I've ever talked to looks at this show and says, "What the fuck is going on?
Yeah.
What's the deal with this?" So, season 1, episode 10, "Move Along Home." A visiting delegation from the Gamma Quadrant, and again, it's like, "Ooh, they're from the Gamma Quadrant," and blah blah blah. It's so early in the show, and it turns 4 crew members into pieces, air quotes, of a bizarre game. Paul, it's your floor.
This so okay. I mean, okay. so many so many weird. There's so many. There's just it's such a so okay.
You're just.
Super minor thing.
I know you're trying.
Super
Keep going.
super minor thing. I'm a computer guy. I do programming and stuff as my day job.
Okay.
It is incredible to me that like they like the Federation or whoever co- is establishing first contact with this new species, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And yet somehow they can dock on that space station.
Mm-hmm.
Like the parts, even though they're from entirely different parts of the galaxy, had entirely different journeys as species and whatever, they can still dock. Like the parts somehow still, you know, go right. That I was like, what? How?
Right. How?
Because half of my job is making things that don't do that.
Right.
So yeah, that physically or software, either way, just it's crazy.
Right.
The leader guy of these aliens, I forget the name of the species.
The Wadi, WADY, if I'm not mistaken.
WADY. Okay. What like I didn't, and nothing against the actor. I did not care for this guy's performance. Like I did like th- something about like he didn't it didn't accomplish anything for me. It to me in watching the performance, I was like, oh, this is clearly an awkward human,
Right.
not like a weird foreign sort of species thing. I just it entirely lacked any kind of charisma. I just didn't care for the guy's performance.
Right.
Um, th- there was a funny moment, which was Quark says to the guy, he's trying to offer him like holodeck
Right.
time in
Right.
exchange for like letting him out or whatever, and he says, "Do you know what a holosuite is? Do you have sex on your world?" And I was like, just come on and say it, man. The holodeck is for boning, right? I
Yeah.
mean,
I
what
mean,
else?
nobody ever want. And again, they go into it obviously completely satirically in Lower Decks, where they're like, basically oh, terrible jobs we ever. One guy's like, one bad job on a ship is being like a jizz mopper. You know what I mean? Like, oh, do you imagine? It's like that's why Lower Decks has kind of been a tilt away for like Rich and myself this season,
Yeah,
because it's just very Rick and Morty, as you know, because it's the Rick and Morty guy who's making the show. But
right.
Rick and Morty meets Family Guy meets Star Trek has just not been a connection for us. But
Yeah.
regardless,
So saying that and hearing you, because I haven't watched that show,
yeah,
but hearing you describe it as that mesh, to me
yeah,
that mesh doesn't work
right, and that's
because
and that's what we bumped into as well.
I can see the whatever if you say it's like Family Guy
What?
meets it's like Family Guy meets Rick and Morty. I can see something being that. But if you
Sure,
mix Star Trek in there, like I don't get it. Star Trek is earnest. Star Trek
right,
is honest.
and
Star Trek
serious
is
and
in
serious and
Star
deep and
Star Trek is
socio-political. Yeah,
Star Trek is in good faith.
right.
Rick and Morty and Family Guy are not in good faith.
No,
They are meant like the purpose of those shows is to make fun of something,
right.
right? Which
True.
by themselves I love. Of course, I mean I have a good sense of humor, but like the purpose of Star Trek is not making fun of things, right? And so hearing you say that makes me all the less inclined to
Yeah,
to want to see the
I don't blame you for feeling that way. So I would say if I, as your Sherpa, was to say what's your assignment beyond our 4 weeks together, I would absolutely put Lower Decks at the bottom
the bottom.
of that. I would put it even below Star Trek the Animated Series, which Rich and I spliced up about 6 months ago,
Okay,
and it was all it was also very unsatisfying.
sure.
But anyway, to tilt back talking about this
Yeah,
episode, tell me some more. Lay it
the
on me.
there even some of the performances of the regular cast had some weird, like there must have been a directing issue here too, because there's the part where they're
Could
in the
be.
game they're
Yeah.
in the game and Bashir is yelling about something, like he's it's right when they first kind of get in the game.
Hmm.
um and sort of Captain or Commander Cisco wakes up and he's like, "What am I doing in my uniform? What is going on here?" Right? And then
Right.
they find Bashir, and Bashir is yelling about something. He's kind of nightmaring his way through. And something about the way he does the yelling and the nightmare thing, I was like, "This is not right. This is not right." It
Right.
was weird
I
and
will. I will.
awful.
I will tell you, because I'm glancing at the credits on the Memory Alpha page, the link that I provided. Directed by David Carson. He's a heritage director. Michael Piller did the story. He co-created the show. The late Michael Piller. He actually died of cancer a few years later.
Okay.
Um, teleplay by Frederick Rappaport and Lisa Rich and Jeannie Kerrigan Fauci. Three names that have no resonance at all for Star Trek. So I get the feeling that you've got the vibe very much one and done. People
Okay.
who,
Yeah.
because as I was talking about several episodes back with Rich, uh, TNG, and then I'm assuming potentially DS9 had this open door slush pile of spec scripts. So and sometimes it resulted in absolutely great things. We got the episode Yesterday's Enterprise, which was a
Yeah.
pivotal episode in season 3 of
Huge.
TNG, where
Loved
Tasha
it.
Yar returned, and it was this
Yeah.
alternate reality thing. Blah blah blah. Was written by a guy named Eric Stillwell, who I actually am friends with on Facebook. He lives in France now.
Yeah.
And it was absolutely spectacular. He did not. It's not like that was his launching point. And then he joined Star Trek, and he is still part of it. Ron Moore was another guy who submitted a spec script. I think it was for the Bonding, which we talked about earlier, the Worf
Yeah.
episode, season 3, and he joined Star Trek, and then he went on to give us DS9 and Battlestar Galactica. So he's like, so it's absolutely, there's no promises at all, no promises any
Yeah.
way, shape, or form.
They didn't find a good one here.
Yeah, they did. So
Um,
yeah, this was somebody who sent one in, and somebody wrote in like, well, it's different enough, and we're early in the show. We got to filter. This was only a 20 episode season because it started in January of '93, and then it wrapped up in May, June. So they only had so many
Oh.
weeks. It wasn't a September to May where like, oh, we got to get in 26 episodes because that's what we do. So yeah, they and Oxtra and I talk about this a lot on the main show. Back in the old days, they were like, we got to get something out. So okay, this is kind of shitty, but why not? We'll do it. We'll do it because we got to have something. And especially this being such an early effort, I get that vibe from this without a doubt.
Yeah. Yeah. There's another thing I noticed too is throughout the episode, Odo is like searching. He's like, where did all the command people go? Right? And he goes to the bridge or whatever you call it of DS9, and there's just some dude just kind of slumping there, like whatever. And Odo is like, where is Cisco? Where is the other ones? And the guy's like, I don't know, they just didn't show up. I heard they went drinking. Like that guy, that Starfleet guy was all too happy or didn't care
That guy,
that
yeah, that was
that the
Lieutenant
entire
Fremen. He was a schmuck. Like two episode stint.
okay, the
Yeah,
entire top tier of the command structure is gone without a trace, and he's like, shrug.
he's
Isn't that funny? Yeah,
meh. What? Yeah,
that was
such. It's like he's the sad clown. Such
yeah.
is life. If I could record that sound, that would be the name. If I could spell that out, that would be the name of the episode.
the Odo goes aboard their ship, and I thought to myself, shouldn't Odo shapeshift to look like them? Like, if he's gonna go aboard somebody else's ship and kind of skulk around, wouldn't
Yeah.
it be better to shapeshift to look like them?
I would think, but at this point in particular, he didn't do so good with the faces. He
Oh, okay.
says that, and then it's funny. I don't know it because what you do find out is that his face, as it were, is the same face of the other founders, the Changelings. And he never, but they're all really great at like they could perfectly imitate like you or I, and nobody
Yeah,
would know the difference. Except the blood screening things, which actually is endemic of that's what the Klingons are all about in
yeah.
the Way of the Warrior. But yeah, Odo never really gets it down so that he can be like, I'm gonna sneak up on you and I look like a Romulan or whatever. He just never really knocks that out. So
Huh. Okay. Okay. That's interesting. Okay. So this one, like, the whole game felt off.
right,
The the somehow that other the Wadi expected Quark to play on even things, and yet they're like, you don't get to know the rules. You don't
right.
get to know the whatever, but you're gonna gamble and win or lose stuff just right along with us, but
Right.
you can't know the rules. What is that? Why? Um, the
It's a whole lot of why. Yes, I
the
agree.
whole episode is why, like the the little there's a little girl in the maze thing
Right.
who's like skipping doing basically hopscotch.
Yeah,
You know,
along the thing, and that's one of the you got to
that's
do it and
that's how
say
you
the
get through the
rhyme.
force field, yeah.
Right.
And like it, I kept thinking to myself, why? why is any of this happening? Why is any of this?
Yeah.
So
In in the
like
end of the
Charlie,
episode, there's no purpose to it. Yeah.
that's my question. Is like, I wrote this down. This is my last comment of the whole set of notes I took. Was this? This is so weird. It did nothing for anything.
That's 100% correct. It's like it's like an episode of The Simpsons. And again,
Yeah.
even the Simpsons will punctuate this, because in The Simpsons, which has been on for 33 seasons, I powered up Hulu today and says, watch the latest Treehouse of Terror, and we're in season 33. 33. You know what I
Jeez.
mean? But they,
Yeah.
no character has ever aged. Homer is 36, Bart is 10, Lisa is 8, Maggie's a
Yeah.
baby. It's never changed. So they will have episodes like Who Shot Mr. Burns and and then they'll punctuate that with with a little stick at it every once in a while, like, well, there's no continuity and cartoons don't need to make sense. I mean, DS9, again, that's why I felt this was such a sharp contrast, because you took one of the absolute best examples of how a show, when kind of turned it up to 11, and they started their trip up the mountain, and
Yeah.
Worf was their Sherpa. He was kind of guiding them to higher heights.
Yeah.
And then you go all the way back to the beginning, and you're like, what kind of throwaway slush pile written by a fourth grader bullshit is this episode?
Yeah.
So I wanted to, that's really what I wanted to illustrate in the spirit
Yeah.
of this segment, was to say, hey, here's one of the best, and here's something that you're just like, why though? Like the meme, the blown up why though?
Yeah. Exactly.
Oh
So
my god.
that's my final thought on this episode is why.
Yeah,
That's all.
exactly.
Why?
Exactamundo. So, well, this was fun, and
Yes.
next week we will transition back to Voyager.
Yes.
I have to dream up one of the best. In some ways, I have some ideas, and I don't know if we want to go with another two-parter or if we want to go with 2 individual episodes. But we'll see.
Charlie, I got to tell you, I'm pumped for it. And no matter how you sort of thread whatever needle there, I'm super pumped, because your first set last week got me there. I'm ready to be like guided more up the mountain here.
Voyager had its own way apart from TNG. When TNG was very run of the mill with the grain, Voyager was like, we got to make this impossible decision so we don't die. We got to make this crappy decision so that we can survive to da. So yeah, no, I'm fired up, and thank you for the confidence you put in me. That really actually means a lot, that someone says to me, like, you're the guy. So
yeah.
All right, well, with that, we shall bring this lovely little program to a close with the outro, which is all up on you, my friend.
For more information about Starfleet International, please visit Grand Petoskey and Region 13 on Facebook. And remember, never go in against a Klingon when death is on the line.
Woo! You catch Trace in front of me. I kind of like it. I will say thank you, as always, for joining us. Sharing is caring, and to keep on trekking.
Code 47 is part of the Secret Friends Unite podcasting network. Visit secretfriendsunite.com for our great shows, articles, news, reviews, and more. Secret Friends Unite podcasts are available on Apple, Google, Spotify, or the podcast platform of your choice. If you would like to be part of the conversation, visit our new Discord server, or join us on Facebook, or follow us at Secret Friends U on Twitter. Please subscribe to Secret Friends on YouTube, and don't forget to visit our merch store at tpublic.com. Just search Secret Friends Unite. Thanks for listening.